"Are you a king?" I asked. He laughed. "I am Raven," he said, "and once I was an earl and a warrior." Hey, what's happening? What's good? Welcome to part 2 of the excerpt from The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, you can, I'll put a little pop-up thing, pop-up here. You can click on that, go check out part 1. So another aspect that is really fun when it comes to audiobooks is how can you differentiate the characters so that the audience, those who are listening, can just hear, oh, that's this character and that's this character. Now there's various different ways to do that. Of course, gut reaction is probably like, I'm just gonna make a completely different voice print for every single character. And well, that will work. Sure. The thing is, every time that character pops up, you're going to have to remember the voice print for that character. And if you have a whole bunch of them together that are coming from different parts of the book, maybe it gets a little messy and a little bit tough to remember, okay, whose voice print was what? But if you cannot see, I asked, how can you tell what happened? Raven laughed at that. Have you heard of Odin? Another thing you can try is just changing where the pitch is. Have different characters at different pitches, or maybe changing the way they articulate their words or the way they speak, the rhythm of how they speak. And I think that's one of those great challenges, especially of audiobooks that are so particular to audiobooks, is the fact that you want to differentiate the characters, but the more different you make them, the more challenging it can also be for you as the narrator. So there's all these different ways you can do it, and you gotta find the way that works for you and what works for the story that you're telling and what book you're reading. And watching their antics took my mind off my sorrow because, in truth, I had never seen such things before. In this excerpt particularly, we're mainly dealing with 3 speaking characters. One is the older Uhtred of Bebbanburg, so that's the main narrator. One's the young Uhtred of Bebbanburg, which is a boy, so his voice, we're gonna throw his pitch up a bit higher. And he'll talk a little bit softer and less confident and less gruff. You know, there's a little bit of an innocence and a softness to kids that you kind of throw in there as well. Then we also have Raven, who's just this old, blind, crotchety, old Viking guy. I am descended from Odin, I said. Are you? He seemed impressed. Or perhaps he just wanted to be kind. But it works really well in this situation because, for starters, it's just an excerpt, so I don't have to keep reading for another 30 hours or something. And also, they're just vastly different characters whose voice prints are gonna be, again, just so far apart from each other that it's very easy to jump from one to the other without that confusion happening. But if you're reading a story where there's lots of old men Vikings and there's, all of them start showing up for the same scene, then it's a tough go. But again, like I said, for each story, for each voice artist who narrates audiobooks, you come up with your own solutions and you figure it out. I mean, the thing about audiobooks is they take a ton of work, a ton of research, even before you start recording them. You don't just read it blind. You gotta make sure you read it over and you make your notes. You probably read the book at least twice before actually recording it. So you'll have a good understanding and a good feeling of what choice is the right choice when it comes to differentiating your characters. At Bebbanburg, not in the fortress, he admitted. It was far too strong. So I hope you enjoy part 2 of this excerpt from The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell as much as I enjoyed recording it. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one. Tell me your name. I almost said Osbert, then remembered I was Uhtred. Uhtred, I said. An ugly name, the old man said. Then my son said it was to look after you, so I will. But you must look after me too. You could cut me some pork. Your son, I asked. Ragnar, he said. Sometimes called Ragnar the Fearless. Who are they killing in here? The king, I said. And a priest. Which king? Osbert. Did he die well? No. Then he shouldn't have been king. Are you a king? I asked. He laughed. "I am Raven," he said, "and once I was an earl and a warrior, but now I am blind, so I am of no use to anyone. They should beat me over the head with a cudgel and send me on my way to the netherworld." I said nothing to that, because I did not know what to say. "But I try to be useful," Raven went on, his hands groping for bread. "I speak your language, and the language of the Britons, and the tongue of the Wends, and the speech of the Frisians, and that of the Franks. Language is now my trade, boy, because I have become a skald." "A skald?" "A scop, you would call me. A poet, a weaver of dreams, a man who makes glory from nothing and dazzles you with its making. My job now is to tell this day's tale in such a way that men will never forget our great deeds."
"But if you cannot see," I asked, "how can you tell what happened?"
Raven laughed at that. "Have you heard of Odin? Then you should know that Odin sacrificed one of his own eyes so that he could obtain the gift of poetry. So perhaps I am twice as good a skald as Odin, eh?"
"I am descended from Odin," I said.
"Are you?"
He seemed impressed, or perhaps he just wanted to be kind.
"So who are you, Uhtred, descendant of the great Odin?"
"I am the Elderman of Bebbanburg," I said. And that reminded me I was fatherless, and my defiance crumbled, and, to my shame, I began to cry. Raven ignored me as he listened to the drunken shouts and the songs and the shrieks of the girls who had been captured in our camp and who now provided the warriors with their reward for their victory. And watching their antics took my mind off my sorrow because, in truth, I had never seen such things before, though, God be thanked, I took plenty of such rewards myself in times to come.
"Bebbanburg,"
Raven said.
"I was there before you were born. It was 20 years ago."
"At Bebbanburg?"
"Not in the fortress," he admitted. "It was far too strong, but it was to the north of it, on the island with a monk's spray. I killed 6 men there. Not monks, men, warriors."
He smiled to himself, remembering.
"Now tell me, Elderman Uhtred of Bebbanburg," he went on, "what is happening?"
So, I became his eyes, and I told him of the men dancing, and the men stripping the women of their clothes, and what they then did to the women. But Raven had no interest in that.
"What," he wanted to know, "are Ivar and Uber doing?"
"Ivar and Uber?"
"They will be on the high platform. Uber is the shorter and looks like a barrel with a beard, and Ivar is so skinny that he's called Ivar the Boneless. He is so thin that you could press his feet together and shoot him from a bowstring."
I learned later that Ivar and Uber were the 2 oldest of 3 brothers and the joint leaders of this Danish army. Uber was asleep, his black-haired head cushioned by his arms that, in turn, were resting on the remnants of his meal. But Ivar, the Boneless, was awake. He had sunken eyes, a face like a skull, yellow hair drawn back to the nape of his neck, and an expression of sullen malevolence. His arms were thick with the golden rings Danes liked to wear to prove their prowess in battle, while a gold chain was coiled around his neck. 2 men were talking to him. One standing just behind Ivar seemed to whisper into his ear, while the other, a worried-looking man, sat between the 2 brothers. I described all this to Raven, who wanted to know what the worried man sitting between Ivar and Uber looked like. "No arm rings," I said. "A gold circlet round his neck, brown hair, long beard, quite old."
Ronald and Chester push me on the ground, call me names, and say I'm no good. And then they always rip up my homework and take every single one of my pens and pencils away. One time, they made me eat a whole pencil and my mouth was bleeding for 2 days. 2 days!